Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Soss. This is their part number 101CUS19. What this is a pair of 101 hinges. Many Soss hinges, most are sold as each, and as a general rule, hinges are sold as each, but there are times when they're not, and this is one of those times when they're not. The C in the part number means carded, and when you see a C in the part number, that means there'll be two in a package. And while it's possible to sell you 3 of these hinges, we'll take one of these and cut it open and pull one out, the whole 9 yards. When you see this, you're seeing a pair of hinges. When you see this part number, there's only one hinge here because I have the other one removed from the packaging, so we can take a look at what this is. This is a mini version of a Soss hinge, or a smaller version. And Soss hinges are a type of hinge that is known to be concealed, that is known to be very elegant, very smooth operating, very capable of handling very heavy loads. The doors can be very heavy. They're also known to some people as being not easy when it comes to install. This video is going to work to dispel any of that because they're actually very easy to install. Okay. It'll make it a little bit more of a challenge to see this because it's the 19 finish, or the US19, which means black. They call it E-coated. I would imagine that means this is some type of powder coat. Made primarily of zinc body. There are going to be these laminated plates there, I would imagine, are steel. Yeah, they're definitely steel. And I do not see any nylon separators in there at all that you would see on the larger hinges. Those stacked those stacked steel plates that have been riveted to the body gives it its exceptional strength when it comes to basically carrying heavier than average doors. Where butt hinges stop, at least average butt hinges, the Soss hinge can pick up and keep going. And where butt hinges thoroughly stop, the Soss hinge can keep going. They have their Hercules series, which the nomograph, and it's the chart that tells you, based on your door width, your door weight, your minimum door thickness, the weight of the door, and how many hinges to use, the nomograph. That thing tops out at over 1,000 pounds. And it was once said by someone at Soss, I don't care how heavy the door is, keep throwing Soss hinges at it. And I can tell you that I've tested that statement, and I have found it to be one that I couldn't break necessarily. We've hung very heavy items with Soss hinges. Extremely heavy. We took one time a 3070 16 gauge hollow metal door, and then they put 3/4 inch granite on the face of that door. So that was obscenely heavy. No problem it hanging, that's for sure. That sort of scenario can violate the one primary hallmark of Soss hinges that cannot be violated, and that's called the E dimension, which we'll go over in a moment. And here it is, shown in the black finish. So let's take a look now at the extended description information, but first let's talk about where you're going to use this. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Where you're going to use this Soss hinge, this 101, or any Soss hinge in fact, is when you want a concealed sort of installation. I have seen these installed on, obviously, doors. 101, or the smaller hinges like this, or the barrel hinges, they'll be used in furniture. I've seen these installed in sewing machine cabinets as well. They work pretty well for that sort of application. They work really well for it, in fact. But the larger hinges, the 216, the 218, even the 220, these are for full-size doors, 1.75 inch, 2-inch thick, 3070, 3080, 3040, 10, whatever you want to hang with them. So a range of all the way down to smaller hinges, the 101 and even smaller, especially with their round barrel hinges, which I'll show you in the catalog at the end of the video, what those look like, all the way up to very large hinges. So when you're looking for something concealed, Soss is a great option. And it will work in most instances, not in all. We have to be mindful of the Soss product when it comes to an unusual thickness and or vis-a-vis placement of the hinge within that thickness, and also any sort of trim that's been applied, because what happens is, let's say this is the frame and this is the door. Well, the door will swing out. We'll have this particular sort of geometry to it. Okay? What we're saying here is that the dimension from the face of the frame or the door, because they're basically assuming your door will be flush with the face of the frame, it cannot exceed this E dimension, which is on the template, whatever it is. For this small hinge, it's probably somewhere in the range of 3/32 of an inch, or something in that range. You know, 1/8 of an inch. Don't quote me, but we'll look at the template in a moment. If you were to apply, chair rail, let's say, or very thick base, or you needed to go to 180 degrees, you have to be very mindful of any sort of conflict that you would have. So that would be the one downside of Soss hinges. However, it's the downside of every concealed hinge. There are other people who make concealed hinges. Tectus is the big name. Simon's work Tectus. Sugatsuni makes them. McKinney makes them. Those hinges are adjustable. They can be adjusted laterally, horizontally, vertically, laterally. Soss has said they will never make an adjustable hinge. And the mere concept to me of making a adjustable concealed hinge like this is one of, why is it needed? And people will tell you, people have told me when I've said, why don't we just use a Soss hinge? Well, those are pretty hard to install. You know, I want to be able to have, hard to install, I want to be able to have some adjustment because I'm not really sure I'm going to mortise it correctly. Okay, but if you're working on a door project and you're mortising material, frankly, it would be understood that you're competent with a router, and it really takes no other prerequisites other than competency to be able to very perfectly machine a Soss hinge the first time you do it. You have to know the top of the door to the center of the hinge, translate that to the frame. You also have to be able to observe the E dimension, which tells you don't exceed how far in you're going to mortise it. And then at that point, all you're going to mortise is the body and then the plate prep, and this will fit in perfect. You have to have the proper router guide, meaning the proper diameter and the proper diameter bit. If you have all of that, this is going to be your next best friend. You'll say, I'm not going to prep for butt hinges anymore. That's too easy for me. When you take the advantages of what Soss gives you, compared against the fact that it's actually quite easy to install, you'll say to yourself, I don't need this adjustability. I'm highly suspect of those hinges that are governed by screws, keeping the door in position. And sure, it's nice to be able to move that up and down and back and forth, I suppose, but what's the long-term effect? I can tell you that in 30 years, I've had one client call and say that the Soss hinge was defective. One time, and it was actually about a year ago. I said in jest, what were they doing on the door? Were they doing chin-ups on the door? No, it's not a door, it's a bookcase, and the children climbed up to the top of the bookcase and sat on top of the bookcase, and they literally bent the laminated plates. I forget the size of that hinge. It may have been a 212, a little bigger hinge, maybe a 208, I forget. But it was, in my opinion, too small of a Soss hinge to use for a bookcase. How many hundreds of pounds can you really put onto a bookcase? You can get to 100 without even thinking, I would imagine, plus the weight of the bookcase. So, in my opinion, Soss has a sterling record, and once it's mortised this dimension correctly, this dimension correctly, there's nothing else to worry about, in my opinion. I would not spend all of the extra money, the orders of magnitude, triple, quadruple the amount for a hinge just to be able to adjust it to accommodate for the fact that I may not be mortising it correctly. Your time would be better spent just analyzing the template, doing a test, making any adjustments that are necessary, and then having at it. So that's my opinion on that. Let's switch to the screen view now, and let's take a closer look at all of the supporting information. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Here is the item that we are indeed looking at. Soss 101C carded US19 black. Now, there is information below this video, extended description information. We're going to go through that. We'll go through these links. Let's first just point out this hinge from this video from the manufacturer. This is definitely demonstrating them using the manufacturer's template that's here. Obviously, I can tell you it's going into a piece of walnut. Looks nice. Now, dimensional properties, these dimensions A through I. A dimension is the width. B is the margin between the two leaves when the door is open to 180 degrees. Overall height of the leaf. Then the margin between the door when you're observing that E dimension, which is 3/32. I had guessed accurately. We'll talk about it in a moment. F dimension is the overall height of the body. G is the gap between the two leaves when they're closed. H is the depth of the unit, and then I is the depth or the thickness of the plate. So I'm going to refer to this long rectangle as the plate, and I'm going to refer to this imaginary rectangle as the body. Okay. Prepping for this material is prep the body, then prep the plate. All of the dimensions that you need are indeed here for this. The only thing that you have to do is don't exceed 3/32 of an inch from the pull side of the door or the pull side of the frame to where the body starts. It's that simple. That dimension right there. Now, if you were to use a Soss template, it will mandatorily force you to observe that. You can't violate that E dimension when you're using their template. I don't know if they have one for the 101, but we'll check. Okay, so extended description information is here. The 101 is for use in wood or metal applications for doors that are 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick, in terms of it being a minimum thickness. The 101 is made of zinc and steel components. This cabinet-style hinge will provide superior appearance and durability. Our hinges are found in many applications where a flush fit, compact size, smooth operation, I would say economical price point as well, are necessary features. The Soss hinge can go to 180 degrees, from 0 to 90 to 180. And they're single acting. They're not double acting at all, naturally. Okay, so 101, wood and metal applications, black E-coated. They talk about these two different wire sizes, a number 53 and a 47. When it comes to the diameter of drill bits, wire sizes are a far more incrementally accurate way to achieve holes. When you are prepping these hinges, they're suggesting that you use a wire-sized drill bit. If you're going into softwood, use a number 53, which is a larger bit than the 47 they want you to use for hardwood. A wire index drill bit set would be standard equipment, assuming you're doing woodworking. Now, if you're doing a metal application, you have to specify that you need machine screws because they're not going to automatically come with these. A number 5 by 3/4 inch wood screw is going to be included. But if you happen to be doing a metal application, specify machine screws, and that's what they'll do. Sold per pair. When you order one, you will be sent 2 pieces. Prices for a pair. Now let's tackle these links that are here down below. We'll just start at the left side, hinge sizing chart. This is that nomograph I had mentioned earlier. And the nomograph basically says, put your pencil line on the door width, okay? So let's just say, 24 inch, somewhere right in this area here. Let's say that you have a 30-pound door. So here, over to 30, continue that line, just kind of eyeballing it, till you hit the nomograph and then go straight across. And you're going to hit every hinge on the chart, basically, with a 24-inch wide, 30-pound door. You then come up here to the door material, you come here to the minimum door thickness, and you can see that the 101, 1/2 inch minimum door thickness. You can use these on thicker doors, but that's the minimum thickness to use this on. So 1/2 inch. So in the 101 column, if I recall correctly, we're going to be right down somewhere in this area. We would be using 2 or 3 of those hinges, depending on where that fell into place. So this is a really handy document to be able to use to help you determine what size hinge and how many. That's called the nomograph. They also have one for their heavier Hercules series, which I'll show you shortly. The common hinges that you're going to see on doors will be 218s. 218, 216, 220. Large, full-size doors. But the 218 is really the one that you'll see in commercial settings all the time. Okay. You can, really top out at some heavy material. You can get up to, they've got 500 pounds on this opening. A 3-foot door that's, 400 pounds. You're going to end up hitting those 218s or those 220s where you'll use 5 or 6 hinges. But when you think about a 500-pound door or a 400-pound door, that's just epic. Way beyond what a standard butt hinge would be best used for. And, as I had said earlier, this is less than half of the maximum weight that Soss can achieve. So that's the nomograph. Cased jamb detail. What we have here, the next few documents, are just some technical drawings from the factory. They're really more so for your personal edification. You can see how adding material to the face of the frame or to the door, or both, will absolutely impact the maximum degree of opening. This door is not going to go much past 90 degrees at all. Okay, you want to probably be mindful to think about an overhead stop, because you don't want to get into a situation where that door is hyperextended and going to cause damage to the door and casing. Why there's no stop drawn here, probably just for clarification point, but there would be a stop drawn here. Now, speaking of overhead stops and Soss hinges, you're going to want to be sure that when you order those overhead stops, you're specifying the fact that you're using Soss hinges, and it's because the vertical axis of pivoting on this Soss hinge floats. This works its way through an arc as the door opens and closes, whereas a barrel of a hinge, that's a stationary point. It's going to be out here, the door is going to rotate around that stationary point, but your vertical axis of pivoting moves. Well, first of all, it's in a different place, and also it floats through an elliptical sort of path. So when you order overhead stops, specify the hinge that you're using so that the templating can come out with the hardware correct from the factory, and be mindful that it will probably cost more money. It may cost more money. I know it does with Rixson, or it did the last time I did a project with Rixson and Soss. Clearance detail. Just an interesting document so that you can see what sort of impact you'll end up having based on what you're doing. All of this is based on the E dimension. You can look at this drawing here and this drawing here. So the applied material is acting as the thickness of the E dimension, and you can see that you can get 180 degrees without any trouble. But when you have an E dimension and then you apply some material to it, you're going to have basically no room left over. So you have to really think about what you're doing. It's so crucial that in a standard installation, you get down to within a 64th of an inch between these trim. Not that you're not going to hit it in this scenario, but it's so hyper small that you have to be mindful of it. That's a perfect example to illustrate why you can't exceed the E dimension. If this were to be another 16th of an inch moved in, all of a sudden you're going to have conflict here. Unless you were to do some sort of a heavy bevel or chamfer out here, like you are doing, when you are basically taking the E dimension and then adding material to it. So this drawing is something that the factory will send you if you ask for some clearance information. They're just going to send you this document. Template and hinge location. Let's do hinge location first. This is a document that the factory provides in terms of guidance of where they want you to locate hinges when you're doing Soss work. I would say that if you're doing cabinetry, like probably for a 101, you're gonna make it look pleasing, top, bottom, that sort of thing, center. When you're dealing with material that's not very heavy, I would not be excessively concerned over where exactly I was going to locate an odd number of hinges. You can see that they want you to bias a third hinge or a fifth hinge near the top of the door, and the reason they want you to do that is because 70% of the weight of the door is hung on that top hinge. Okay? So if you ever see spring hinges installed, 2 spring hinges and a standard hinge or ball bearing hinge, that ball bearing hinge should always be at the top location, and then your spring hinges should be middle and bottom. Let the ball bearing hinge do the work because it's rated for the work. If you're doing 216s, 218s, 220s, you're dealing with 7-foot doors, 8-foot doors. Yeah, you're going to want to think about following the guidelines from the manufacturer. It's how the material's been tested. You're also going to want to contact your door manufacturer and make sure that you won't have a problem with a warranty situation, because there is established published documentation that says for doors up to 60 inch, use 2 hinges. For every 30 inch thereafter, add another hinge, and you continue to add hinges. The point is that they're saying space them out equally. In general, is what's happening. You'll have a dimension between the first hinge and the second hinge, and the second hinge and the third hinge being the same value. Make sure that you won't have an issue with your door manufacturer should the door warp if you're installing it soldier stacked like this. Okay. Now the template. The last document to look at other than the catalog. So this is those this is the original set of dimensions A through I, all shown here, and it looks a little, I suppose it could look a little intimidating, but it really isn't when you study it. And you don't need all of these dimensions, is the bottom line. So the E dimension, 3/32, if exceeded, door may not open. Okay, don't exceed it. 3/32 of an inch from that, where the prep starts, to the edge of the door. It's that simple. Okay. What do you need to do now? We talked about the plate prep and the body prep. What are your dimensions for the body? The body is going to be 7/8 tall. It's going to be, they want a mortise of 15/32. So I don't see where they're telling us the mortise for this, but I would probably bias that by a 1/16 of an inch. Increase that a little bit. Okay, that dimension. The depth dimension, now how wide? Well, that's easy. It's 3/8, shown right here. Now you have all 3 dimensions. Once you prep that body, you'll have this prep in the door. Then you're going to do your plate. Well, it's 1 11/16 overall height. It's going to be 3/8 wide. Then it's going to be 7/32 thick. You do that preparation. And then at that point, you're done. Go to the center line, mark it off, make your 2 preparations, you're complete. If you have a top of the door to the top of the first hinge of 6 inch, the top of the door to the top of the hinge on the frame is going to be 6 1/8, assuming 1/8 of an inch margin between the underside of the header and the top of the door. Or to the center line. I would personally be prepping off the center line of this hinge. And, a caliper is really the woodworker's second best friend after the router. So you can break everything down, test everything, put a caliper on your tool, on your hardware, do a reality check on your dimensions, put a caliper on your tool to make sure that you've got the right bit, the right guide. Now, speaking of the material that you would need to use to install the hardware, that's going to be seen at the link to the manufacturer's page here. From there, you can pull up not only all of the Soss products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the product catalog. So let's open up the product catalog. I happen to know that the installation accessories are quite near the end of the catalog. And here they are. Router guide templates and template system. So they do make a template for the 101 IT. I don't know if I have a 101 IT shown here in terms of any actual photographs that I've taken. But we do have the 218. So the 218 is a much larger hinge, but the concept is the same. What's going to happen here with this is you've got your template. It's shown here. These are the 2 roll pins that I had talked about earlier, one here and one here. That will force you to observe the E dimension. The template is held onto the edge of the door with a nail that's included that will go through this hole and this hole. You'll prep your body, and these stop pins that are here, which are really just funny drywall screws, you'll prep that first. You'll remove those and then prep the plate. So it's really that easy. Now, in order to do so, you also have to follow the table when it comes to the size of the bit that you need. For the 101 IT, you need this 43828. It's a 1/4 inch diameter router bit. Okay. You're also going to need the proper size router guide bushing, because the OD of the bushing is directly related to the size of the hole that they've prepped in the template. This overall width and height is not the overall width and height of the unit itself. It's that unit itself plus the clearance that you need for the guide. And, of course, based on what you're removing with the router bit in terms of the diameter. If you were to use a different diameter bit, you're going to find that the hinge is either going to be too sloppy or not fit at all. And that would be dreadful. I did have a customer call, ordered hinges, the bit, the guide, and the entire template system here. They don't make one for the 101. They have them for the 212, 216, 218, and 220. Client said, everything's okay. The guide works fine, but my hinges are so tight when I install them into the door, I don't know what's wrong. So as we walked through it, I had the client give me dimensions. The first question is, did you use the router guide that you bought? Yes, I used the router guide. Okay. What router are you using it on? I'm using it on a typical Porter cable. Great, that's what this is meant for. What size are you using the bit we sent you? The answer is yes. Okay, well, get your caliper or your tape measure. And I had the client measure the guide. It measured exactly the proper OD of 3/4 inch. I had him measure his bit, and sure enough, it was the wrong size bit. The factory had sent him a 1/4 inch size bit, allowing, thankfully, the hinge to not fit in correctly. I think we were doing 212s on that project, and they sent him a bit that was too small, so it wasn't removing enough material. Once we discovered that, the mystery was thoroughly solved. The factory shipped him out the proper 3/8 size bit. He rerouted his prep, and everything was just dandy. Everything worked perfectly at that point. Okay, beautiful looking hinge, really just tremendous. You can use that template on the frame or the door. Comes back the same way. They're assuming, though, when you install that your door is going to be flush to the frame because of where that roll pin forces you to locate the template. If you wanted them to be inset ever so slightly, you're going to need to observe the E dimension on the door, and then you're going to need to shim off that template off of the frame. I'm actually saying that in reverse. You're going to want to observe that on the frame, but then you're going to want to pad in the door ever so slightly so that it is moved in correctly. Soss is assuming that this is flush, no inset here. Okay, I don't really think it'd be a problem to change that if you needed them or insisted that they were inset, but I don't think anyone's really going to be noticing it myself. There is a flip over tab that you see here when you buy the guide. That's what allows you to hook it to the top of the door, obviously. When you fold that back, that also then acts as the shim underneath the underside of the header to give you that 1/8 of an inch margin that you need from the top of the door to the underside of the header. So in this section of the catalog, near the end, is where you'll find all the installation tools for this material. Let's scroll up to the beginning of the catalog and quickly run through this. Soss has other material. Well, they have some encyclopedic information. Interesting to read, no doubt. They have some latches. Obviously, places where the Soss has been used: the White House, Buckingham Palace. This is called Falling Water. Frank Lloyd Wright's crowning achievement. There's a beautiful story behind the drawing of this that I won't go into now. I have in other videos. You can easily look it up. Just a stream of consciousness that resulted, a 4-hour stream of consciousness that resulted in the greatest private residence likely with the exception of the White House and maybe Elvis's Graceland, that has existed. That's in Pennsylvania, by the way. Other places where it's been used. So anyway, they have this latch system, which I'm not familiar with. I've not used their palm latching system at all. So I'm going to skip through it because I don't know anything about them. I've not used them. We're going to be able to get down to interesting use of this. Tray table to NYC, on NYC to N, so okay, so it's a table, a compact folding table on a train, on a commuter train. So we're going to get into where the hinges are, and here they are, Soss Invisible Hinges. It's about halfway through the catalog, well, more than halfway through, 2/3 of the way. They have spring versions, fire-rated and non-fire-rated. If you want your doors to self-close, this will talk to you about spring hinges, also tell you about the quantity that you need based on the door weight. There's that Hercules hinge that I had mentioned. There's that nomograph I had mentioned for the Hercules hinge. You can see it tops out at almost 1,100 pounds. So, how heavy is your door? Go ahead and bring it. Go ahead and bring it. Keep throwing Soss hinges at it. Now they have their standard hinges that are here. Our 101 is down here, really close to the small end of this. There's the 100, which I've seen in the past. The larger versions, the 212, and then your regular culprits. 218 is the most common hinge for me. Fire-rated versions of that. If you're doing an opening that's fire-rated, Soss can help you. They can also do them in stainless steel. Power transfer hinges, if you need to run low voltage through the hinge, they can help with that. Be mindful that it meets your electrical requirements. Okay. Why would you need a power transfer hinge? Well, you might have some monitoring that's happening on the lock, latch bolt, the trim, the strike. Not on the strike, but you might have a request to exit switch. You might have, electrified dogging. You might have glass that is turned opaque to transparent and back with a flip of a switch. You could use that for there as well. Beautiful concealed sort of application. Metal cabinet applications. That drawing should be familiar to you. They talk about, how that moves through the opening cycle. There's the barrel hinge I'd mentioned a couple of times. If you're doing very small or very lightweight applications, furniture applications, the barrel hinge may work. They have a quadrant hinge. Furniture applications, obviously. Magnetic door holders. You'll see these in fitting room applications all the time. What's nice about these is you can install it on the baseboard or on the floor, as you can see, on the door, however you like. And then we're back to where we are with all of the installation aids and more encyclopedic information that I would certainly recommend that you dive into. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. In conclusion, a very nice quality hinge here from Soss. As hopefully it came through in this video, I'm quite partial to the entire product line. For me, it's a very elegant way to solve, lots of different problems. The problem that you have, whether be hinges or pivots, whatever the hanging device is, you're always going to have to be mindful of where that vertical axis of pivoting, the point of rotation around which you're rotating. Whether it be a concealed hinge with some sort of applied molding, or it be a butt hinge where you need some dimension of wide throw, and then how that dimension of wide throw will impact how the door moves through the opening and closing cycle. In particular, how it makes contact or works when it's within the space of the rabbet of the frame. It's very handy to be able to study all of that to know exactly what you're going to have to contend with. But when it comes to these concealed hinges, they're all limited by that E dimension. And while there's variations on that. A concealed type hinge is really not the type of product when you're going to have some sort of applied trim on the pull side of the door. If you're putting it on the push side of the door, you're not going to have any problem at all. It's when you're applying it to the pull side that you need to start to think about, how far you can move that hinge back, or how much you can leave on the face of the door when you're mortising for it. So anyway, if you have any questions on the Soss 101CUS19 or any other Soss product, please feel free to reach out to us. I do want to give you an idea of the different finishes before we wrap this up, and I will just list them here now. Okay, the 101 can be done in a dark bronze lacquered finish, a bright nickel. Let's start over. 10BL, which is the oil rub bronze lacquered, US14 satin, polished nickel, US15 satin nickel, US19 black, US26 polished chrome, 2060 satin chrome, US3 polished brass, US4 satin brass, US5 antique brass, and then W for white. They can do 24 karat gold plated. They can do solid stainless in a polished finish and solid stainless in a satin finish. 13 different options on that. The body, unless it's stainless, and I'm not sure about the gold plated, but unless it's stainless, that body is going to be made of zinc. Now, what's nice about zinc is that it will take a very, very nice finish. A polished brass over zinc looks pretty nice. In fact, it does. Is just the bottom line. Zinc is also very, it takes a nice finish. It's economical and it's abundant. To build this out of solid brass, obviously you wouldn't be dealing with anything fire rated, and it would probably just make the cost quite exceptional. Although it would make the finish quite exceptional as well. Zinc is pretty good when it comes to finishes. And I've never had anyone say, oh, that finish is not acceptable, that's not a brass-based material, etc. I've never had anyone say that. In fact, zinc is used very often when it comes to cabinet hardware. It takes a really nice finish. Any questions on the 101CUS19 or any other Soss product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.